All right, I think I got it right this time. Perfect. Okay, so exploring the Nexus. I think I got it right this time. Yep, sound is working. Exploring the Nexus 3K. Put everything back together from the last video. Got everything all buttoned up. I actually used the air compressor I have here at my home, and I was able to blow up both devices. There was a little bit of dust, but it was actually fairly clean as far as devices go, because I'm sure these were in production. So wanted to show you guys what I'm doing with this 3K here, this Nexus 3K. I've already gone through the default setup. Again, I should have probably done a video on that, but I wasn't really thinking. I was just kind of into it, and I was like, you know what, let me do a live stream of this, because there's a couple commands that I haven't gone through, or a couple things that I haven't gone through, and I was just like, oh, okay. There's a couple things that I wanted to go through in terms of configuration, and I was like, oh, okay, this will be pretty cool to do a live stream on. So I've already gone through the default config. On the default config, when you boot up a Nexus device or this Nexus 3K, it asks you questions like first off, what's the password you want to use, and it has password requirements. Put my phone on mute. Has password requirements, and then also it'll ask you a series of questions to actually set up the switch. You can get out of that, but what I noticed when I went through it last night, it wouldn't let me save the config, like doing a write of the config, because I guess there wasn't much that I actually put into it. So it noticed that, which is pretty cool. So then now today I'm going through it, and it's going through that whole process. So I just went through the default process. I enabled SSH. I decided whether I want a DSA or RSA key. So I chose RSA, 2048-bit encryption of that key, or in terms of the key length. I was able to name the switch. As you can see right now, I'm sharing my console. I'm a Linux guy, so I will be running Linux in terms of a terminal and all that. What I have been seeing thus far, which is pretty cool, there's a couple things. So it actually has you go through what they call a COP. And with the COP, I looked this up a moment ago. I believe it's on my phone here, so I wanted to read that off to you guys. Yeah. So Nexus 3000 series NXOS security configuration guide. So I searched the COP policy, because it asks you what policy you want to use, whether it's the default, layer 2, or layer 3. Looking at Cisco documentation, this chapter describes how to configure control plane policing and which it's C little o large P. So COPP on NXOS. Information about COP, control plane policing, protects the control plane and separates it from the data plane, thereby ensuring network stability, reachability, and packet delivery. This feature allows a policy map to be applied to the control plane. This policy map looks like a normal QoS policy and is applied to all traffic destined to any of the IP addresses of the router or layer 3 switch. A common stack vector for the network device is denial of service, where excessive traffic is directed at the device interfaces. The Cisco NXOS device provides COP to prevent DOS attacks, DOS, denial of service attacks, or even DDoS, distributed denial of service attacks, from impacting performance. Such attacks, which can be perpetrated either inadvertently or maliciously, typically involve high traffic rates or high rates of traffic destined to the supervisor module or CPU itself. The supervisor module divides that traffic. It manages into 3 functional components or planes. So it goes into the data plane, handles all data traffic. The basic functionality of Cisco NXOS device is to forward packets from one interface to another. The packets that are not meant for the switch itself are called the transit packets. These packets are handled by the data plane. Control plane handles all routing protocol traffic or routing protocol control traffic. These protocols, such as Border Gateway Protocol, BGP, and the Open Shortest Path First, OSPF protocol, send control packets between devices. These packets are destined to the router addresses and are called control plane packets. Management plane runs the components meant for the NXOS device management purposes, such as the command line interface and simple network management protocol, or command line interface CLI, simple network management protocol, SNMP. All right, so it goes a little bit deeper. It gives you example of DOS attacks, internet control message protocol, ICMP or pings, echo requests, IP fragments, TCP SYN flood, or SYN act. I forgot. SYN is sync, I think. Synchronous or synchronized. I always forget that. SYN flooding. There's a lot of things I forget actually. These packets can impact the device performance and have the following negative effects: reduce service quality, such as poor voice and video and critical application traffic, high route processor or switch processor CPU utilization, and it goes a little bit deeper. So I wanted to go over some of the policies. The the three that they give you in terms of options. The default policy. This policy is applied to the switch by default. It has classes with policer rates that should suit most networks installations. You cannot modify this policy or the class maps associated with it. In addition, you cannot modify the class map configuration in this policy. So it gives you a set of policy maps that it applies by default, and you can always change this later on. Policy map type control plane cop-system-policy. One of the things, and it does this in packets per second. So class cop-s default policy police PPS packets per second 400. And it goes through and it does that for SSH. It'll do 500 packets per second, SNMP 500 packets per second, NTP, and quite a few other like normal network traffic protocols such as ICMP, ARP, routing protocol, so on and so forth. And then it also has a layer 2 COP policy. So this layer 2 COP policy is mainly for layer 2 traffic, or a switch that will be used mainly for layer 2 traffic, such as just a regular switch to connect edge devices. And that actually changes things. So for instance, let's see here. Routing Proto 2, that polices the police PPS 900 packets per second, whereas the default has routing Proto 2 as 1,000 packets per second in the default. And then it actually has a layer 3 COP policy. Pretty much the same thing. So long list. Definitely check out the Cisco documentation on this. But it goes over things like that and allows you to pick that policy. So I already went ahead and I wrote that policy and went through that. I didn't understand it at the time. So I can do things like show run. And here you'll see some of the things that I have put in place. I'm not really worried about the password because this will be a local switch within my network. So I'm not worried about that getting out, but definitely something you want to keep secret. Switch name, MJNS Lab -SW0. This switch will actually probably be behind, or management of this switch will be behind a firewall, like within the lab, which will be behind that 5550. Not my regular network firewall for my normal everyday home traffic. But you see some of the things that are already put in place. I didn't put any of these in place. As you can see here, 224.005/32. So that's broadcast traffic, or that's a broadcast address. Most likely, it looks like for OSPF routing updates, possibly. But as you can see, it adds all of this. So this is almost like what I remember from the Cisco ASAs, like the 5505, if you choose like a default policy when I used to work on it years ago, setting up one of those. Didn't really understand it at the time, never really got deep into it. here is that default policy. And these are some of the things that I was reading off a moment ago. And you can see here it says police 400 packets per second. I picked the default one, and this is why I didn't read through it, because it's a long list that looks just like this here. So then that gets into the regular. Now we go into the interfaces. One thing that I was mentioning last stream, interface Ethernet, and everything is all Ethernet. It just names Ethernet, so 1 through 52, and then it gets me back to here. Now, what I was what prompted me to actually start this video is that I was trying to do a config. So went to config terminal, so that's pretty much the same. Working with it, and then I was doing. So in the old, in Catalyst or iOS, it says int range, and you would usually put F1 or 1 for the chassis number / and then interface number. In some cases you'll have chassis module, so chassis / module / or module line card / and then the actual interface on that module or line card. In this case, it's a single fixed switch, and I don't have FEX capabilities on this, so I don't do fabric extenders on this at all. Sorry, thought I had like a text message. So I don't have that capability on that at all, which is why I want one of the 5K, so I can actually do that. But you have F1 /1-52, and that doesn't work. So what I found out is in the Cisco or in the Nexus series devices, it's interface Ethernet and then 1/1 / the range you want. Now, what this tells me is the range command doesn't exist. It's not necessary anymore. I don't really need to use it, which is okay. It's not a big deal. It's just one of the things you just have to learn when dealing with this. Excuse me. If you wanted to apply, something to every port on the switch, you're not going to use the range command in this case. That might change in different releases of the NXOS. I got a 5.x strain. There's the 6.x, and then now the 7.x strain of the NXOS for the 3K. So I actually gotta figure out how I'm gonna get that, because I do want to upgrade. I do like to have the latest firmware. As you can see, I have the K9, so I can do SSH, and then 5.0.3.U3 2B, what you see there on the screen. So I actually want to get a newer version of that. So we'll see about me getting that. Interface Ethernet 1. So here, I don't think anybody's in the chat here, but just want to make sure. All right, cool. Nobody's in there. Not popular. But here I can actually look at. Now I can actually do some commands. So I want to probably do spanning tree port fast. I usually do that, and you're going to do something like that on edge switches, so that just makes the port come up a lot faster and settles the spanning tree calculations a lot faster. There's a problem with that, especially if it's a trunk switch or if it's a switch connected to another switch, that can cause a nasty broadcast loop or broadcast storm, because you could have a loop in your network. So in this case, I know this is an edge switch right now. I can always change that configuration, but let's try and configure that. So spanning tree port fast. Oh, that's not working. So in NXOS, that command, if I still do the shift or do the question mark, all I have is spanning tree port, and then I can, I guess, there's no port fast command. That's kind of weird. So then I do, I was like, all right, cool. So I'll do space and then question mark again, and it says type, specify port type for spanning tree protocol use. All right. So again, this is all learning and getting used to this platform, so I know my way around it. So in this case, edge is what I'm looking for. Consider the interface as an edge port, meaning connected to a server or an edge device, not another networking device that would cause a possible loop. Even a router, you might not want to have that as an edge device. Maybe it just depends on how you actually configure a router. Is it in bridge mode, or is there any bridge mode, or is it connected to a bridge port or anything else? You definitely want to be careful of that. So edge, and then there's network. Consider the interface as an inter-switch link. Normal, consider the interface as a normal spanning tree port. If it's normal, then it's going to take its time to come up, calculate the spanning tree, and see if there's any issues with that port and any of the packets that it's actually broadcasting over the network, or that will be broadcasting over the switching network. So in this case, I'm going to do edge. I'm going to give you the warning. It's called warning. Edge ports should only be enabled on ports connected to a single host, connecting hubs, concentrators, switches, bridges, mentioned bridges, etc. To this interface will, when edge port type port fast is enabled, can cause temporary bridging loops. Use with caution. Edge port type port fast will be configured in 52 interfaces due to the range command, but will only have effect when the interfaces are in a non-trunking mode. So if I set any one of those ports up to be a trunk, then it would automatically see that and disable the port fast capability on that port. And that's just another way to protect you and stop any bridging loops from occurring. So that was it so far. That's pretty cool. So if I do show run, in this case in iOS, I would have to do show run, depending on the version of iOS. So I'll get out of that, but I want to do show run int. And I mean, you saw this like where you can do show run. You saw that in the ASA 5505s, in the ASA 55 series. That's been there for a while. That's really nothing new to me. Can't say I'm a seasoned veteran of all this stuff. I do Cisco stuff, but I really deal with their switches mostly. But I've seen that before. Show run int. And I'll do F1, say 52. That's one of my 10 gig ports. And you can see that the command is already applied. I don't want to go through the entire config by doing a total show run, so I'm just going to do the interface. So that's pretty nice. What else? I guess we can do. So what I usually like to do is get a couple ports configured in an Ether channel. For the most part, what I usually like to do is start or give the first 4 ports and reserve the first 4 ports for switches or other switches, routers, WAN connections. So my port 1 and my port 2 will be for my primary and secondary WAN, respectively. My 3 and 4 might be for inter-switch communication, or for other devices, maybe a certain server or something like that I want to dedicate to that one port. Most likely, I'll be I'll definitely be connecting to the 10 gig ports for some of my for one of my servers. I have the SFPs and everything for that. Actually, we'll start this at 5. So those first 4 ports, I'll just leave alone, and then up to port 48. Or actually, no, that's too many. I'm going to do a port channel, so let's see if I can actually get this done and put the config in there for it. So port port 5, 6, 7, 8. So what's 8? Will be a part of this port channel. Damn, how do I do this again? Spanning tree port fast. Yeah, there we go. Port channel. No, that's if I want to do that. Don't want to look it up. What's it again? Port channel, configure load balance. That's kind of weird. Maybe I can't do port channels on this. This is kind of weird. Feeling that I'm not in these interfaces anymore. So I need to do, should be channel group. Yeah, there we go. Channel group. Yeah, there we go. Channel group 1. Forcefully add port force. Yeah, that's fine. Let me see what mode means. All right, active. Yeah, I guess I had to knock the dust off the brain here. Haven't done this in a moment, but channel group 1 mode active. I don't remember exactly how it was on the Catalyst devices, so I could be. This could be a new paradigm for me, or new way of actually configuring these ports. But channel port group 1 or channel group, excuse me, channel dash group 1 mode active. Enter, so LACP, link aggregation control protocol. Process needs to be started before configuring active mode. Oh, okay. So I think that is where I have to, and this is something new in NXOS, new to me at least. If I do feature, and then I have all the different types of features. Yeah, that's it. So I have to do LACP process. So enable LACP. This is what I'm looking for here. So in the NXOS, essentially what happens, it's kind of like, it reminds me of Python scripting, or actually Python coding, where you have to import certain modules for them to work. So you actually have to enable certain features. And that's kind of a licensing thing with these NX devices or these NXOS devices. It allows Cisco to say, hey, listen, you know, you can have the device, the hardware is there, you can do whatever you want with it as long as you buy the proper licensing for it. So if I do feature, these are the features that are available to this device here. Depending on my licensing, I can actually enable those features or not. So I'm not sure if it's one of those things where my license affords me to enable all these different features here. But right now we're just going to do LACP and see if there's any commands after it. Nope. CR. So press enter. Boom. All right. So I'm going to go back to my interface range, or my set of interfaces that I want to configure this on. And then I'm going to press up, that's been in the Cisco, that's been in Cisco for a while. Definitely in Linux for the longest, of course, in terms of their command line. Interface port channel. No, I don't want to do that. Should be going back to my channel group command, which doesn't look like it's there. Okay, so that's fine. I know it, so whatever. Mode, and then I'll do active to make sure it's active. I don't want it to be passive or on. I want it to actually be active. These are going to be LACP ports, or lag ports, or link aggregation ports. So I'll definitely be doing that. Active. All right, boom, looks like it took. I'm going to do a write. Uh-oh. All right. One thing, if you press Control A, you should be able to move to the beginning of the line. Control E, move to the end of the line. If I wanted to delete the previous word, or delete one word back from where my cursor is, Control W. Depending on the terminal emulator that you're actually using, especially if you're using something like Termius, which I love, but you have to actually configure it to make sure that it doesn't close the window, because Termius is an Electron app, and with Electron apps, they pretty much act like Chrome browsers. and it'll close your entire session, which sucks. So you can do that. You can actually configure it to not do that, and you can make that Control W to be like Control Shift W or something like that if you wanted to close out an actual terminal session. So be careful of that. Let's see. I want to make sure everything's still going here. All right, cool. Yeah, we're still good. So yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is with that. Maybe I've heard of the commit command, but I believe that's on larger devices. Also, I could just be in the wrong prompt, which is why you have to do the do. You have to precede all that write command by the do command. So we'll see. And again, learning, not looking anything up, going off my previous knowledge, and seeing how that works. But I am going to do a show int. I want to do the running config show run int f1 and then 5. So spanning tree port type edge, channel group 1 mode active, right? And then I want to see my port channel, see if that's actually up. All right, so no negotiate auto. So I'll do a little bit more research on that and get that going. This is where, what's going to be connected to this is my 5550. I'm going to do about like 4 1 gig connections to it, and then start running tests to it in terms later on, of course, but I'm going to start running tests to it to see its bandwidth or its capacity and what it can actually do under load. Per the documentation, regular packets per second, it does about 1.2 gigabits per second of total bandwidth that it can actually handle uninspected. With it being inspected, that depends on the service module that you put in there. And if you put in a SSM, I think it's an SSM or AIP. If you put in either one, like a -20 or -40, I think a -40 gives you about 650 megs per second of inspected traffic, deep inspected traffic. So that's pretty cool. And that's a little bit more expensive module, and that will replace one of the sister cards in here. So we'll see about that. So show run F1. That's really it for now. What I do want to do is run some trunks over this, or make this a trunk port. So what I'm going to do is no spanning tree right off the bat. So spanning tree. Let's see if I can just do no spanning tree. No, wait. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I removed the spanning tree from this port because I know it's going to be connected to a switch or a router, and I don't want to cause any loops. But it shouldn't really cause any loop with a layer 3 device connected to it. But you never know. So I want to make sure I don't have that issue while I'm doing my configurations. Also, I do still have to see if the 5550, which will be in another video, setting that up, and that one I'm going to actually do from start to finish on that one, in terms of, or from the beginning, so you guys don't miss anything in terms of actually putting that together. So channel group mode 1 active. What did I want to do? Switch port mode. Yeah, mode. Trunk. Already in a port channel. Okay, so that means now in the past, when I was actually doing this, so for instance, actually I could probably do something like this: description, ASA 5550 PO1 F1 -1 5 to 8. All right, so that works. in the past, you used to be able to actually apply configurations to the port itself, to the ports within the channel group or the port channel group. But what it's looking like it wants me to do is do int po1, so for port channel 1, and then you show run. It's not letting me do the command I wanted to do. So switch port, and that's kind of cool. So what I just noticed is, of course, that, and I noticed it before, but I wanted to point this out. But now that I've dropped into a different sub configure terminal, or I've actually gone up, really, I switched. So you have config, and then you have the history of those commands for that config, for that sub config terminal here. So as you can see, before I was in config if range, config interface range, and now I'm just into config just a single interface. And when I'm in config interface, I have a different history that I can actually scroll through. Now, if I wanted to go back, I would assume that I can actually go to I can actually interface for. Guess I was wrong. Weird. Okay, I was wrong then. But I'm noticing that the memory is not consistent. So if I ran a command such as switch port mode trunk, and then I press enter, it either didn't write to the history, and that's why I don't see it there, because it wasn't a valid command or wasn't a command that was accepted, or my thought is, or my theory is, that it actually has different sub histories, or it has histories for each sub command, which is kind of cool. If that's the case, but it doesn't look like it is. Right. So, all right. So int po1, and I'm going to do switch port mode trunk. And that's it. Switch port mode trunk. So those ports 5, 6, 7, and 8, are all in trunk mode, or they're port channels. So it's a virtual interface all bundled together, or bundled ether, depending on where you're coming from, or however you would like to say it. But it's running the, I think it's the 802.1AD. 802.1AD. Yeah, 802.1AD is an Ethernet, informally known as QMQ. No. What? I don't know why it said it was QMQ. I know 802.1AD as, if you look it up on Wikipedia here, in computer networking, the term link aggregation applies to various methods of combining or aggregating multiple links connections in parallel in order to increase throughput beyond what a single connection could sustain, and to provide redundancy in case one of the links should fail. A link aggregation group, LAG, combines a number of physical ports together to make a single high bandwidth data path, so as to implement the traffic load sharing among the member ports in the group and to enhance the connection reliability. I mainly do these because, and that was from Wikipedia. So if you look up link aggregation, you can actually find that, what I just read off. Oh, that's why. I was totally wrong. That is known as IEEE 802.3 AD. Not to be confused with 1AD. And I always say 1AD. Damn, it's good to get these refreshers, because there's so many times where I'm misquoting some of these IEEE standards, and that causes all types of issues. Okay. This is pretty cool. Initial release 802.3 AD in 2000. As of 2000, most gigabit bonding schemes use IEEE standard for link aggregation, which was formerly clause 43 standard added task. Okay, that's really not that interesting. I read that. I skimmed through that improperly. But there should be a limit. I want to say there's probably like a limit of 8 interfaces for link aggregation group. And that's mostly in Cisco devices. So for instance, if I wanted to aggregate, say, 3 or 4 10 gigabit Ethernet ports, I can make a 40 gigabit Ethernet port channel, and it has resiliency in there, either over, say, a single 40 gigabit Ethernet port channel or 40 gigabit Ethernet link. So that's really cool. But yeah, we're learning and we're refreshing. 802.3 AD, 3 AD. Got to repeat that a couple times. 1 AD is actually Q in Q. So that's VLANs within VLANs. And so that just allows you to transport VLAN traffic through another VLAN tunnel, allowing you to span VLANs over ISP connections or long haul connections, such as Metro Ethernet links, so on and so forth. Also, it allows you to increase the amount of VLANs that you actually have available. Usually on a device, it'll have about 4,096 VLANs addressable or usable. Some devices, of course, don't use that. That's just the limit. Some devices will only allow you to use up to like 128 VLANs, 64 VLANs, what have you, depending on their power in terms of processing and how they handle that. MAC address table sizes as well. And then with Q and Q, it allows you to put VLANs within that. So, for instance, if you have 128 VLANs available, then with Q and Q, you can do 128. And you can do 128 VLANs within those 128 VLANs. So you have your VLANs for your VLANs. So that's 128 times 128. So that gives you about 16,300. It gives you 16,384 different VLANs that you can actually run on a device, depending on if that device can actually handle it. Because some devices will allow nesting, but it only allows a certain amount of VLANs in that nest or to be nested. You guys don't see a lot of the stuff that I'm doing off screen. That I'm kind of just I was just using the calculator. I'm not that smart in terms of math, so don't get me twisted or wrong. So switch port mode trunk, and I'm gonna do show run int in PO1. So I have that in switch port mode trunk, and then I could do a description on it. ASA 5550. Trunk. Boom. And then I want to do it right, but that won't let me do that. So I'm going to press Control Z to drop out of the config terminal, and then I'm going to do it right. That won't let me do that. Right. All right, so I got to figure this out. How am I going to write my config? So let's look this up because I definitely don't know it. Actually, no, let's do this. Let's look at all our commands here. So configure, echo. I remember hearing something about you have to commit certain commands, but it doesn't look like the commit command is available to me. Roll back on script. It might be one of those copy run starts. I probably just have to do a copy run start instead. Yeah, see, write current configuration. I mean, the write command is available. All right, so let's investigate that a little bit more so I understand. So you can do a write erase, destroys the configuration on persistent media. Don't want to do that. So I'll do a copy run start. Okay. Okay. That'll do ya. So copy run start. Looks like the right command is not available anymore, or I can't use that anymore. So I can do copy run start. I should be able, of course, to do that from the config terminal as well. Skill learned. All right, I'm gonna go back to watching anime here, and I want to reload this device to make sure that actually it comes back up properly. So let's do that before I go back and watch cartoons. Got to do a track meet today. Some of you guys know I actually do coaching, so coaching and mentorship. Do you want to continue? Yes, I do. Do coaching and mentorship. So we have a track meet. Got mad at some of my kids, some of the athletes yesterday. They're just playing around. They don't take it seriously. So sometimes what you have to do as a coach is just be real hard on them. So in that case, I just told them I left. I said, hey, listen, man, I just left, I should say. And I told them, listen, pack it up, put everything away. And they're like, well, coach, I wanted to show you this. And I was like, nope, we'll see you tomorrow. We'll see how you guys do. So we'll see how they do. And when they have competition, and let's see how they take that and go into practice later on. Because what usually happens is, what I've learned is with coaching, they don't learn until after the first game. So we had a meet last week against Ely High School. I'm here in South Florida, so our school is South Plantation High School, which is my alma mater. And they had a meet with Ely High School again this year. We had transportation issues, so everyone did not go to that meet. Only one person went. She won. She's already got a full ride to FIU. She should be signing that paperwork and getting that done. It was a choice or toss up between that and basketball. So she chose track because she just gets more money and she doesn't have to pay. As long as she does well, she should be good to go. But we didn't get to go to that meet. Everyone didn't get to go to that meet last week. So now this week the meet is at home. So everybody should be able to get to go, or not get to go, but everybody should be able to participate, which is going to be great. It's going to be a lot of kids out there. I think we're going against Northeast High School and maybe Miramar, and they always have athletes, whether it's running, shot put, discus, what have you. They always have athletes. So we'll see, especially Miramar. They have a really good coach out there. I've gone back and forth with him. He's a great guy. So we'll see how that works. And going against him again, I hopefully get to see him. He's always a good guy to talk to and everything like that. But what I expect is that they're going to get their ass whooped. They're not going to win. And then I'm just going to have to look at them and say, okay, are we going to play around and practice anymore? And sometimes that's what you have to do as a coach. You know, all that aside, now I have to say, all right, cool. Like, guys understand that we can't be sitting around here playing and doing all this other crap when we want to win. We want to do well. We want to throw far. You know, with shot put and discus, you can't just go out there and sling it and that's it. Not everybody's that good. And even if you are that good, you can be so much better. And that just means you have good raw talent. So pretty much what we're looking at is and so I'm logged in, show run. Doesn't remember command from the last session. But pretty much, you know, we're gonna go there. I'm kind of hoping that they'll get their ass kicked. I'm not gonna lie to you. I want to see it happen. So it just gets in their mind and they understand. And then from this point on, you start to see kids kind of like dwindle out over time within the next couple of months. And then you'll have the kids that make it past districts, regionals, and then hopefully the states. Hopefully we can do that this year with the same girl. She won 7th, or she got not one. She placed 7th last year. And even with her 7th place finish, she placed 7th the year before, and she threw actually I think a whole foot or 2 feet farther last year than she did the previous year. So I was actually proud because she actually made an improvement. So that was great, but she still placed the same. She didn't feel good about that, but with what she did at regionals alone. She was heavily recruited by FIU, and that coach was balls to the wall, calling her all the time and everything like that, wanting to get her because he didn't care about the numbers. And this is sometimes what you have to see with coaching or anything else. They don't care about the numbers, but what they do care about is the body type and what they potentially can do with that person. So, that's good, because I'm a decent coach. I've been doing it for like 4 years now, but I'm lacking in certain areas, and I don't have a problem admitting that because I'm always trying to find ways to make improvements. Watch YouTube videos. I have this premium account for a reason. So I watch these YouTube videos and try to get better. And it's the same thing I do even with my skill set. Buy my equipment. I invest in what's it called? I invest in myself to make myself better. And pretty much that's where I want to spend my money, is to go from there. And I actually have a slogan that I want to try. So we'll see. I'll do it at the end of this. So show run int P01. Oh, it's configured. Right. So then also show int F15. That is also configured. 6, 7, 8. Wow. Oh, 7. That's 7. 8. Sorry. Count chocolate. What's it called? So we have everything there. That's all good. Survives a restart, so that's good. This device has both power supplies plugged in, and it's actually fairly quiet. I'm very surprised by the lack of noise here. So I'm going to end this session. Thank you guys for watching. For those that are going to watch the replay, I don't think anybody's watching live. I don't think anybody's watching live. No. Yeah, no, nobody's watching. But so I was listening to, I was talking to myself the other night, and I was just thinking about, like, things I can say and kind of what my motto, my mantra is for a lot of these things. So as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and spend money on yourself to make yourself better.